You don't just need space. You disappear. One day you're replying, showing up, laughing in group chats, tolerating people the way everyone does, and then something flips. You stop answering, you stop explaining, you stop trying to be understood. You cut everyone off, friends, family, co-workers, even people who genuinely love you, and you feel this strange mix of relief and grief, like you finally took a deep breath, but also like you just burned your own house down so you'd never have to clean it again. And the scary part, sometimes cutting everyone off feels like the healthiest thing you've ever done. So what's really happening inside the psychology of a person who cuts everyone off? Let's go deeper, because in most cases, it's not coldness, it's not evil, it's not even confidence. It's protection, it's fatigue, it's a nervous system that learned connection can become danger. And once you understand that, you'll never look at ghosting everyone the same way again. A person who cuts everyone off usually isn't trying to punish people, they're trying to stop the bleeding. Most people imagine cutting everyone off as an arrogant move, like someone thinks they're better than everyone else. But if you've ever been the one who vanished, you know that's rarely the truth. The truth is more quiet and more human. You reached a point where you could not keep being who you had to be in order to stay connected. For some, connection has always come with conditions. Be pleasing, be useful, be funny, be calm, be available. Don't be too emotional, don't need too much. Don't ask for clarity, don't confront the inconsistency, don't ruin the vibe. And over time, the social self becomes a job, a performance, a survival role. So cutting everyone off becomes the first time you stop performing. It's the moment the nervous system says, I can't do this anymore. Not because you hate people, because you're exhausted from managing them. There's a major difference between solitude and isolation, and people who cut everyone off often confuse the two at first. Solitude is chosen, it's nourishing, it's restorative. Isolation is protective, it's reactive. It's the mind building walls because it no longer trusts bridges. When someone cuts everyone off, it can look like self-care, but internally it often has the feeling of I'm safer alone. And that sentence, I'm safer alone, is one of the most psychologically revealing sentences a person can carry. Because it tells you what their history has taught them. That closeness comes with cost. That intimacy invites injury. That being seen becomes being used. That people don't leave gently, they leave suddenly. That love can turn into leverage. And if that's the lesson you absorbed, then distance starts to feel like wisdom. But it's usually just a wound with a strategy. Let's talk about the hidden reasons people cut everyone off, starting with the most common one that people rarely admit out loud. They don't cut people off because they don't care. They cut people off because they care too much, and it hurts too much. This is the paradox. Some people feel things deeply, absorb atmospheres, read tone shifts, notice micro-rejections, carry conversations long after they end. They don't just have friends. They carry friends inside their nervous system. So when relationships become confusing, inconsistent, disrespectful, or emotionally unsafe, they don't have a mild reaction. They have a whole-body reaction. They can't half-detach. They can't keep it casual. They either stay fully emotionally invested, or they have to sever the cord completely just to stop feeling the constant strain. That's why you'll see a pattern. They tolerated too much for too long, then suddenly they're gone. To outsiders, it looks impulsive. But internally, it was a slow accumulation of small betrayals, unspoken disappointments, one-sided effort, and the exhausting feeling of being the only one who cares about the health of the connection. And when the internal weight crosses a certain threshold, the psyche goes into an all-or-nothing move. This is also where attachment psychology matters. People who cut everyone off often have a history of anxious avoidant dynamics, wanting closeness, craving it, even idealizing it, but also fearing it once it becomes real. They may have learned early that closeness is unpredictable, that love can be withdrawn, that expressing needs leads to shame, that conflict is dangerous. So what do they do as adults? They don't practice healthy boundaries. They practice disappearance. Because boundaries still require connection. Disappearance ends the negotiation. A boundary says, "Here, what I need in order to stay." Cutting off says, "I don't believe you can meet my needs, and I don't want to beg anymore." Sometimes it's not even about anyone doing something wrong. Sometimes it's about the person finally realizing they've been living with social debt. Social debt is when every interaction feels like an obligation, every message feels like pressure, and every relationship feels like you owe an emotional performance. A lot of people who cut everyone off are secretly burned out caretakers. They were the listener, the fixer, the one who showed up, the one who gave advice, the one who made people feel better. And when you've played that role for years, you don't just get tired. You get resentful. Not because you hate people, because nobody noticed you were drowning. And here's a painful truth. Some people only know you as a function, not a person. So when you stop functioning for them, they call it selfish. They call it cold. They call it changed. But what actually happened is you stopped being extractable. And that shift can feel like a rebirth. It can also feel like grief, because you realize how few people were truly attached to your soul versus your usefulness. Another deep reason people cut everyone off: shame. This one is huge, and it's rarely talked about. Some people disappear when they're not okay, not because they don't trust you, but because they don't trust themselves to be seen in a less than state. They don't want anyone to witness their depression, their anxiety, their financial struggle, their heartbreak, their failure, their confusion. They don't want to feel like a burden. They don't want pity. They don't want questions they can't answer. So instead of saying, "I'm not doing well," they vanish. They isolate to avoid the humiliation of being human in front of other humans. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes to return, because now they also carry guilt. So they stay gone. Cutting everyone off becomes a shame spiral disguised as independence. You'll notice something: many cut everyone off. People don't actually enjoy the isolation after the first wave of relief. At first, it feels quiet, clean, controlled. But after a while, the mind starts to echo. Because relationships aren't only draining, they're also regulating. Humans are wired for co-regulation. We calm down through safe connection. We become real through being mirrored. We heal through being held in a stable bond. So when someone cuts everyone off, they lose the drain, but they also lose the medicine. And without realizing it, they may start replacing people with substitutes: scrolling, sleeping, fantasizing, numbing, overworking, overthinking, binge-watching, daydreaming about a new life where nobody can reach them. That's not always peace. Sometimes it's dissociation, wearing a calm mask. Now let's go into the Jungian layer, because Deep Psyche Lab doesn't stop at surface behavior. In Jungian terms, cutting everyone off is often the rise of an archetype: the hermit, the outcast, the wounded protector, or the scorched earth survivor. These archetypes emerge when the psyche feels betrayed by the social world. The hermit archetype says, "I will find truth alone." The wounded protector says, "I will never let anyone get close enough to hurt me again." The outcast says, "I don't belong, so I'll stop trying." The scorched earth survivor says, "If closeness equals danger, I'll destroy closeness before it destroys me." And here's what's so important: archetypes are powerful, but they are not meant to run your entire life. They're meant to protect you during a season. If you make an archetype a permanent identity, you stop growing. You become a role instead of a person. So the real question isn't, is cutting everyone off good or bad? The real question is, What is it protecting you from? Because the psyche always protects something. Sometimes it's protecting you from repeating a pattern, like choosing emotionally unavailable people, staying too long, tolerating disrespect, overgiving, losing yourself. In that case, distance can be intelligent. But sometimes it's protecting you from something more intimate. Vulnerability, conversation, repair, the risk of being misunderstood, the risk of needing someone. And when that's the reason, cutting everyone off doesn't free you. It freezes you. Now let's talk about the emotional signature of someone who cuts everyone off, because there are telltale internal experiences that show up again and again. 1. Hypervigilance. They're always scanning for changes in tone, loyalty, intention. They notice when someone responds slower than usual. They notice when someone's warmth drops by 5%. They notice when they're being used as emotional labor. And it's not because they're paranoid. It's because their nervous system is trained. If you grew up in a home where love was unpredictable, you learn to study people the way soldiers study terrain. 2. Emotional saturation. They feel full, not full of joy, full like a cup that can't take one more drop. One more message, one more request, one more "can I tell you something?" one more family drama, one more friend crisis. So instead of setting one boundary, they set a nuclear boundary. They remove the whole social environment. 3. Delayed anger. Many people who cut everyone off didn't express anger as it happened. They were the peacemaker, the understanding one, the one who gave second chances. So anger built underground. And when anger finally surfaces, it doesn't come out as yelling. It comes out as silence. It comes out as absence. 4. A secret fear of being trapped. Some people cut everyone off because relationships feel like cages. Even loving relationships can trigger a fear of obligation. If I stay connected, I'll have to keep being available and I'll lose myself. So they preemptively end things to protect their autonomy. Underneath that is often a history of enmeshment where they weren't allowed to be separate as a child, where love meant merging, where boundaries weren't respected. If that's your history, then adulthood closeness can feel like danger, even if the other person is kind. And that's one of the hardest truths. You can be harmed by the past inside a safe present. Now let's address something uncomfortable but necessary. Sometimes cutting everyone off is a sign of growth. Yes, there are times when your social circle is built around your old self, the version of you that tolerated disrespect, played small, laughed off pain, accepted crumbs, stayed quiet. When you start healing, you start noticing what you used to normalize. And you can't unsee it. So you distance. You stop engaging. You stop being reachable. You start choosing peace over familiarity. That can be maturity. But there's another version where cutting everyone off is not growth. It's avoidance disguised as standards. This is when someone mistakes, "I'm not dealing with people anymore for I'm healed." But healing doesn't remove your capacity for connection. Healing upgrades it. Healed people don't need to disappear. They can speak. They can set limits. They can tolerate discomfort. They can repair. They can say, "This hurts me," instead of silently burning the bridge. So here's a powerful self-check. Are you cutting people off because you finally respect yourself? Or because you don't know how to have difficult conversations without feeling unsafe? Because those are two very different psychological worlds. And if you're honest, you can usually feel which one it is. Now let's talk about the sudden cutoff phenomenon, when it looks like a person woke up and erased you. That sudden cutoff is often the final stage of a long internal process. Stage 1, they overgive and over-accommodate. Stage 2, they feel unseen, but they minimize it. Stage 3, they start withdrawing emotionally while staying physically present. Stage 4, they test the relationship silently. Will you notice I'm pulling away? Will you ask? Will you care? Stage 5, they interpret your lack of noticing as proof you don't value them. Stage 6, they disappear. It's not always fair, but it's common. And it reveals a core wound. If I have to ask for care, it isn't real. That belief is toxic, but it's usually inherited. It comes from relationships where needs were punished, ignored, or used against them. So they stop asking. They stop hopping. They stop risking. And they choose the clean pain of disconnection over the messy pain of longing. Now, what about the people who cut everyone off and genuinely don't feel bad? That exists too. In some cases, emotional numbing has taken over. When the nervous system has been overwhelmed for too long, it stops producing normal emotional responses. It's not cruelty, it's shutdown. This can happen in prolonged stress, trauma, severe burnout, depression, and chronic anxiety states. In that place, cutting people off can feel like nothing because the person is operating in survival mode, not relational mode. If that's you, the goal isn't to force yourself back into social life. The goal is to gently reintroduce safety to your system. Because you can't logic your way back into connection. Your body has to believe it's safe again. So what does healing look like for someone who cuts everyone off? It usually starts with a different kind of boundary. Not the boundary of disappearance, but the boundary of clarity. Instead of cutting everyone off, you learn to filter. Instead of deleting everyone, you learn to differentiate. Instead of all or nothing, you learn this person gets this level of access. This is emotional maturity, access levels. Some people get your presence. Some people get your honesty. Some people get your vulnerability. Some people get your silence. Some people get nothing. But you don't decide that from panic. You decide it from discernment. And discernment is calm. Discernment doesn't need drama. Discernment doesn't need a big exit speech. Discernment simply moves. Here are a few healing shifts that change everything. 1. Learn the difference between discomfort and danger. If your nervous system treats every conflict as danger, you will always choose disappearance. Healing means retraining the system. This is uncomfortable, but I can survive it. 2. Practice direct communication in small doses. Not giant confrontations, small truth. I didn't like that. I need time. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available for this. Every time you speak a boundary, you teach your psyche that you don't have to vanish to be safe. 3. Stop waiting until you hate people. A lot of cutoffs happen when resentment has already rotted the bond. Learn to address things earlier when they're still editable. 4. Choose relationships that can handle reality. Some people only like the version of you that never needs anything. Those people will always punish your humanity. Choose bonds where repair is possible. Because real intimacy isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of repair. Now, if you're watching this as the person who got cut off, here's what you need to hear without sugarcoating it. Sometimes you didn't deserve it. Sometimes you did. Sometimes the other person is running from their own wounds. Sometimes they're reacting to patterns you didn't realize you were repeating. But either way, chasing someone who is in shutdown rarely brings closeness. If someone cuts you off, the healthiest move is not to demand access. It's to reflect. Ask yourself, did I ignore signs? Did I take them for granted? Did I repeatedly cross boundaries? Did I make them feel unsafe to speak? did I become emotionally lazy? And also ask, are they capable of repair, or do they only know how to end things? Because that matters. You can miss someone and still accept that they are not emotionally equipped for relationship. And if you're the one who cuts everyone off, here's the hardest, most honest truth. Sometimes you're protecting yourself from people who hurt you. And sometimes you're protecting yourself from being loved. Because being loved requires presence. It requires staying long enough to be seen. It requires letting people disappoint you without turning that disappointment into a verdict on humanity. It requires learning that safety doesn't come from isolation. Safety comes from boundaries, self-trust, and choosing well. Cutting everyone off is often the first act of self-respect. But it shouldn't be the last. The goal isn't to become unreachable. The goal is to become unshakable, so you can be connected without being consumed. So if this hit you, sit with one question tonight. What did I lose faith in people, or my ability to protect myself while staying open? Because the moment you rebuild faith in your own boundaries, you stop needing to burn the whole village just to feel safe in your own skin. And if you want, type one sentence in the comments, just one. I'm learning to choose peace without disappearing. If you felt seen by this, like, subscribe, and stay close to the channel, because this is what we do here. We go beneath the surface, into the real psychology, the shadow, the pattern, and the path back to yourself.